everyone, this is James Lindsay, and you are listening to New Discourses Bullets, where I give a short bullet point-like summary of a single topic from woke Marxism or woke fascism that you need to understand so that we can defeat it. And in this case, we're talking more about woke fascism. And what I'm actually talking about in this episode is the MAGA Civil War. I just released a very long essay and an associated podcast that actually reads most of that essay, an earlier version of it, the title of that essay, and I encourage you to please try to read it. I know it's 20,000 words long, which means it's the third of a length of a typical book. The podcast I released that reads the majority of it, what happened is I edited it one more time after I did it for the podcast because I found typos and then I felt like I needed to add some things. So I encourage you to listen to the 2-hour podcast if you can't read the 20,000 word essay, but I encourage you to read the 20,000 word essay too and share it. And the title of that essay, it's on New Discourses now and already, is The Woke Rights Elitist Coup Inside the MAGA Civil War. And so I am doing a bullet episode. I'm going to try to keep this under 15 minutes to explain the crucial argument. Now, how am I going to summarize 20,000 words of text in 15 minutes? I'm going to skip over all the buildup. The essay is organized in 4 chapters. I literally call them chapters. They're a little over 5,000 words each on average. One of them shorter, so it works out. And I'm just going to talk about the last one. I'm going to talk about the punchline. The other 3 set up how this works. And so I'm going to explain 2 concepts here, which is number 1, elitist capture, which is the mechanism by which MAGA is being taken over by the woke right. I'm going to explain what's actually happening with MAGA, vis-a-vis, if we want to be cool, the woke right, regarding the woke right. And secondly, I'm going to explain how MAGA is actually structured as a movement on the big picture scale and how this elitist capture works. That's the point of my super long essay, which is also the 4th chapter. So if you want to read the argument in full, but you don't want to read 20,000 words, click on the link, click on the table of contents, skip to chapter 4 at the bottom, and just read those last 5,000 or 6,000 words, which I get it is still long. I'm going to condense the argument here for you so you don't have to do that, but I think you should to really get what I'm talking about. So here's what I think is going on in MAGA. I think there is a coup happening in MAGA, a power grab by the woke right, who has been working as a sleeper cell within all along. It started out as the alt-right. It started to get organized in 2020 and 2021 in particular. It started to build itself into a real wedge and splinter movement, and the wedge and splinter movement it was building is designed to take power and to capture MAGA, then to capture conservatism, and then to capture America if it can. So here's the program. Number 1, step 1, phase 1 of the MAGA or the woke right revolution against MAGA or coup against MAGA is to seize control of the elites of the MAGA ecosystem, not society at large. Just the MAGA ecosystem and just their ephemeral elites, the celebrities, the influencers, the bigger movers and shakers. Trump is not in this calculation because Trump is Trump. He's bigger than this. That's phase 1, capture elite MAGA, as I call it. Phase 2 is to capture all of MAGA using elite MAGA. Phase 3 is to capture all of American conservatism and maybe even abroad by using MAGA as the tool that extends it to all of conservatism. They will set the terms in terms of woke right ideas of what it means to be a conservative. And then step 4 is to try to use MAGA as the radical movement that they have radicalized to take over American politics overall. This is the thing that Mr. Bannon calls nationalist populism. And what I'm describing is a coup attempt by the radical nationalist woke right that is attempting to do this. And it's very important because it is not the vein of MAGA. MAGA is not woke. MAGA is rejecting woke. MAGA is not the woke right, but there is a woke right splinter within MAGA that is doing a coup in 4 stages. MAGA elites, MAGA overall, conservatism overall, then go for the gold of America. Okay, so to understand how this works, there's a mechanism called elitist capture, And I need to explain that MAGA exists in three kind of tiers. You can think of it like the three classes: upper class, middle class, working class, or lower class. Okay, but I call these classes elite MAGA. They only exist in the MAGA ecosystem, by the way. And so there's like the celebrity elite MAGA. Then there's what I call middle MAGA, who are the hardworking, mostly grassroots people who are putting rubber to the road and getting most of what MAGA does done. They are the unsung heroes of the MAGA movement. Most of them are not famous. The most famous of them are not quite famous. They are middle MAGA. They are the middle class of the MAGA movement. And I don't mean in economics. And then there's normie MAGA. They are the cheerleaders, the supporters, the guys who come out. They listen to the shows. They come to the events, sometimes when they can. They are MAGA through and through, but they are not doing a lot of kind of activist work, and they are not celebrities. So we've got elite MAGA on the top, we've got middle MAGA underneath, and we've got normie MAGA under that. So my claim is that phase one of this revolution, which works through elitist capture, I'm going to come back to that, is to capture elite MAGA. Once they have elite MAGA, they will use elite MAGA, this is phase two of that revolution, to capture normie MAGA and middle MAGA, which they are attempting to do. My argument is that phase one is already complete. It was completed by summer 2024, so last year before the election. Slowly, mostly over the last 4 years during the Biden administration, these guys were working to build infrastructure, to capture media institutions, to capture political networks, and they have set themselves up to capture X, actually, too, after Elon Musk's purchase of it, which, of course, X is a sewer now. It's almost unusable, and it's mostly because the woke right have driven everybody else off and are terrible. And then phase three would be to spread that to conservatism, and phase four would be to spread that to take over America. This model follows the same model the Democrats did in the early I guess about a decade ago. You had a very slow portion where they built up, and then very quickly they captured the elites of the Democratic Party following the 2016 election, where first it was, they struggled with Bernie Sanders and they kicked him out. Then the whole thing went radical very quickly. Then they used that to capture the whole Democratic Party, which was very primed for it. So it was very, very easy. That spread out to everybody who is like educated and sophisticated in society, the so-called liberals. They captured all of them very quickly using Trump derangement syndrome primarily, COVID more later. And now they very nearly got America. They got through 3 stages of their revolution, and they almost got through 4, but MAGA got in the way. So now we have this woke right revolution happening within MAGA, causing a MAGA Civil War that is has completed phase 1 within the MAGA ecosystem and is proceeding through phase 2. All right, so that sets a lot of table. What is elitist capture? Elitist capture is what happens when you set up a bunch of norms, aesthetics, practices, opportunities, and so on that the elite get to participate in that nobody else gets to participate in. And you capture a movement through access to this elite stratum. So you have trend setters, you have vibe setters, and everything else. So elite MAGA becomes less and less and less something that's adding true value and more a party of vibes that's setting a mood, and everybody becomes attracted to and captured by the mood. There is usually a lucrative and opportunity-laden incentive structure here. Elite capture very frequently works on 2 sides. In this long essay, I explain how it relates to the structure of sadistic cults, like woke is a sadistic cult, including woke right, but I'm not going to get into all those details here. What you actually have happening is that you have massive incentives for people who at least keep their mouths shut, but certainly for people who play along, and the better they play the game, the more they can have. That includes legitimately people who care and lots of grifters who can't be filtered out and are useful to the cult anyway. Secondly, what you do is you set all these terms. It's an aesthetic, it's a move, it's a vibe, it's being based, as they say, being edgy, saying the right jokes, showing up at the right bars in DC, hanging out with the right people, but also punishing the right people, shunning the right people, canceling the right people, hiding from the right people, bad-mouthing the right people, distancing yourself from the right people, but also ideas and so on. It is setting yourself apart as part of that elitist aesthetic that makes elite capture work. And there's a strong incentive structure, both with strong rewards, which are inclusion and belonging, actually, if you want it in the leftist terminology. If you play ball, you get to be included, you get to belong. And if you don't, you will be excluded viciously and ostracized. That's the inclusion and belonging we're familiar with on the woke left, and it participates within the MAGA ecosystem from the woke right, because they have used this elitist capture, these opportunities, this status, this false status for playing ball with the woke crap to secure access to the president and the White House, to secure access to cool invites, networks, opportunities, shows, speaking positions, getting to go to the cool conferences and the cool parties and everything else, getting to hang out at the cool tables at the cool bars all around DC and what they're calling, some people are actually calling conservative or MAGA Disneyland. This is how they've captured them. And everybody in the elite MAGA knows that if they step out of line or they support the wrong people who are criticizing what's going on, they're going to be cast down. They're going to be thrown out of that false elite, that bogus woke elite. They're going to get cast down. They're going to get put in the middle MAGA, and they're actually going to have to work for their bread. They're not going to have their cushy, cool, soft jobs, celebrity status, and really big opportunities. And that, depending, they might just get cast out, but they might also get destroyed. They might get canceled. They might get slandered. They might get badmouthed. They might get doxxed. They might get ruined. They might be humiliated. On the left, when they did this, it drove people to suicide. It's not possible. It's not impossible that this would happen again here. Ask me how I know. And so this is the process of elitist capture in very short. There is a false or bogus ideologically driven elite that captures a movement by setting its trends, aesthetics, behavioral norms, and expectations, and most importantly, what you are allowed to think, what you are not allowed to think, who you are allowed to hang out with, and who you are not allowed to hang out with, and in fact, who you must actually distance yourself from, or in fact, slander and discredit and try to destroy, cancel, so to speak. And this is how elitist capture works. So here's my argument. Elitist capture has already, through its incentive structures that were built up over the last 4 years, including the election of Donald Trump and access to the White House, which is largely controlled through the national conservative movement, from what I understand. Again, ask me how I know. And this incentive structure has been built out and has slowly captured elite MAGA. Nobody will step out of line because either they're afraid that we won't win if we fracture the coalition, or they don't want to insult their friends, or they know their opportunities are tied up there, or they know that their bread is buttered there, or they just don't want to face the status loss, or they don't want to face the bullying, or they don't want to face the cancellation or absolute trash talk they're going to get if they step out of line. I've heard all of these things from different people. They are terrified in many cases. They know they should speak up, but they're scared. That's your red flag that elitist capture has, not just set in, but it has captured the elite tier. So all these influencers, not all of them, probably 90% of them, 75 to 90% of them are captured, if I had to guess, in that they are either complicit, active participants, or just dead silent because they're too scared to speak up. That's phase one of the revolution. It's called power consolidation. Mao Zedong did this. When he did the Long March in the 1930s and went to Yan'an, he consolidated the power in the inner ranks of the CCP at Yan'an, which became a sacred place for the CCP through his entire time in power. Then he used that to consolidate power in the early 1940s across the whole CCP. That's phase one to phase two. Then he used it to consolidate power over all of China when he took power in 1949. And through his tenure in office, he refined and purged and consolidated his power more and more and more cyclically. This is a Maoist model of how to take power. It is actually the thing that is to be referred to as the Long March, not just into and through the institutions. So at any rate, elitist capture is the tool being used now. Mao had slightly more brutal tools, but it was also his favor, which was the elitism in the party that you had to curry. So it's very similar. So what I'm claiming now is that middle MAGA and normie MAGA are now being pressured. Why has everything woke right exploded since last summer, August, maybe September, and especially after the election? The reason is because they realized they had control over elite MAGA. They realized they had their vector to get into power. They realized they had a crown jewel, which is access to the administration that President Trump runs, and J.D. Vance. And they decided to run with it and try to capture all of MAGA. And what's happened, the MAGA Civil War, so to speak, is that normie MAGA is totally confused but looking on and split on the issue, but not particularly invested. They are following President Trump primarily, not all these stupid influencers, though they do listen to them because they're demoralized and don't know how to tell what's true, so they have to listen to their voices that they trust. They don't know what voices to trust, but these guys they've listened to for the last 4 to 5 years in the MAGA movement are the guys they turn to, the big names, which, by the way, a lot of them are not just captured by elite capture, they're captured by foreign dollars, as we're starting to discover, which is very unsettling and very uncomfortable. But then there's middle MAGA, and middle MAGA is in this weird position where they want to go along with the energy. They also want to get stuff done, and they can't get called out and blasted by the big influencers. They need the opportunity for air cover or to get their message out through a big channel every now and then. And mostly they're just trying to get stuff done. The last thing they need is some big influencer in the MAGA space to go blast them for something that they said or put them down or make a call or whatever. Or if they hear something from like a legislator or a law group or something that's trying to actually accomplish something in the world, they just need their seats at the table where they have them, whatever those are, and they can't compromise their specific missions that are actually getting the things done. So they can't anger elite MAGA, but elite MAGA is captured. And here's the MAGA Civil War, and we'll wrap it up. The MAGA Civil War is that middle MAGA has realized what's going on. The mask is enough off of elite MAGA and the woke right that's driving it in particular. It has come off enough to where middle MAGA has woke up and is saying, oh, hell no, this is not MAGA, this is not us, this is not American, and we're not doing it. And of course, because this is a psychopathic cult dynamic that's coming from the woke right, what they're doing is blaming the resistance on middle MAGA. They're not blaming themselves for running a coup against MAGA to capture the elites, which they've already done, to capture the whole movement, which they are not succeeding at so far, so they can go on to capture conservatism in America and all of America, maybe if they can. Probably not through the vessel of Donald Trump, who some of them say they're just using, but he's not sufficient to the job, that they're going to need a true radical right-wing tyrant to get the job done later. And they're going to try to manufacture the conditions to get that. So this is actually what's happening. Elitist capture has captured elite MAGA. Middle MAGA is waking up to the problem and is saying no, and in some cases fighting back. The elite MAGA is fighting back very nastily, trying to drive everybody away from anyone who's discrediting or spotting or exposing or explaining the woke right phenomenon that's driving the elitist capture in the first place. And the goal is to steal MAGA from MAGA, including from Trump, so that they can do whatever it is they want, whether that's to achieve a radical right-wing government under their control, which is possible, or more likely to just be so radical and so nasty that the Democrats end up sweeping in 26 and in 28 and taking back power, which many of them, like I said, think is a good idea, because if that happens, then we don't have to keep fooling around with Trump. We'll get 4 more years of brutal suffering in the 28 to 32, I guess, and then what will happen is we'll get our true right-wing tyrant who's going to fix everything. That's actually something that they've talked about. He would be coming into power in 2033. Hitler came into power in 1933, so that's kind of interesting. But anyway, this is the big picture of what's going on with the MAGA coup. Please go read the full essay on New Discourses if you can make time for it. I know it is 20,000 words. At least read that last section, which is just chapter 4. The name of the essay again is The Woke Right's Elitist Coup Inside the MAGA Civil War. And I hope that this will help you understand this woke right so-called drama. It is not drama. We are not just having infighting. This is a coup attempt by radicals who are trying to take MAGA away from America and away from Trump in order to effect their own radical agendas, be that to serve a radical right or actually as a foil to the radical left. and it must be identified, and we must reject it and stop it.